Welcome back to Top 5.
The Robertson Family. In January 1971, the Robertson family, consisting of patriarch Dougal, his wife, and their 4 children, embarked on a sailing trip aboard their wooden schooner, the Lucette. Dougal, a British dairy farmer with limited sailing experience, sought to impart the university of life to his children. Their adventure began well, with the family exploring the Pacific Ocean and visiting various ports for 17 months. However, on June 15, 1972, their luck turned when they encountered a pod of killer whales off the coast of the Galapagos Islands. The whales rammed their boat, causing significant damage and leaving the family stranded at sea. With their vessel taking on water and supplies dwindling, they had to act quickly. They abandoned the Lucette, taking only what they could fit into a small dinghy that was far over capacity. With only 6 days' worth of food, they faced the reality of survival on the open ocean. As the days turned into weeks, they relied on rainwater for hydration and hunted for food, catching sea turtles and collecting fish when possible. Dougal and his eldest son, Douglas, took turns steering the dinghy while the rest of the family tried to keep their spirits up. They sang songs and shared stories to distract themselves from their dire situation. After 38 grueling days adrift, they were finally spotted by Japanese fishermen who brought them back to safety. Their ordeal was a harsh lesson in the importance of preparation and the unpredictability of nature. 9. Angela Hernandez. In July 2018, Angela Hernandez was driving along the stunning yet treacherous coastline of Big Sur, California, when a small animal unexpectedly darted across the road. In a split-second decision to avoid hitting the creature, she swerved her SUV, sending it careening off the cliff's edge. The vehicle tumbled approximately 200 feet down to a rocky beach, leaving Hernandez with severe injuries, including a brain hemorrhage, fractured ribs, and a collapsed lung. When she regained consciousness, water was lapping over her knees, and her heart raced as she realized the gravity of her situation. With sheer determination, she grabbed her multi-tool and smashed the window, crawling out onto the rocky beach. Though she was battered and disoriented, Hernandez knew she had to act quickly to survive. With no shoes and minimal supplies, she began walking along the shore, hoping to find help. Desperate for water, she remembered a survival tip: moss could provide hydration. Using a hose from her car, she collected dripping water from the moss along the rocks. Days turned into a week as she navigated the coastline, shouting for help whenever she heard distant voices from above the cliff. Sadly, her cries went unheard. Finally, on the 7th day of her ordeal, a group of hikers stumbled upon her wrecked Jeep while scouting the beach for fishing spots. They scoured the area and found Hernandez, crumpled and exhausted, resting on the rocks. They provided her with water and called for help, leading to her rescue and marking the end of a harrowing journey. 8. Stephen Callahan. In January 1981, Stephen Callahan set sail on a solo voyage across the Atlantic Ocean in his 6.5-meter sloop, hoping for adventure and self-discovery. After successfully crossing the ocean, he began his journey back home. However, as night fell one fateful evening, a storm rolled in and Callahan's boat was struck by a whale. The impact ruptured the hull, and the vessel began to sink rapidly. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Callahan scrambled to gather survival gear from the sinking boat. He managed to grab a small amount of food and water before abandoning ship, clambering into a 6-foot circular life raft. Alone and adrift in the vast ocean, he faced the terrifying reality of survival. For the first few days, he relied on the supplies he had salvaged, but they quickly dwindled. Callahan had to adapt to his new life at sea. He fashioned a spear from a piece of his boat to catch fish and used a solar still to convert seawater into drinking water. Day after day, he battled the elements, struggling against dehydration and extreme sun exposure. As the days turned into weeks, he drifted farther away from shipping lanes, becoming increasingly desperate. On day 50, he was covered in sores from the saltwater and was losing hope. Just when he thought he might not survive, he spotted birds circling his raft, indicating nearby fish. On day 76, after nearly 2.5 months adrift, he was finally rescued by fishermen off the coast of Guadeloupe. Callahan had lost a third of his body weight and was physically and emotionally exhausted, but he emerged from his ordeal with a newfound appreciation for life and the will to survive. 7. Harrison O'Keene. On May 28, 2013, Harrison O'Keene was working as a cook aboard the tugboat Jaskin 4 when disaster struck. The vessel capsized off the coast of Nigeria during a storm, plunging into the depths of the ocean. O'Keene was trapped in the latrine when the ship went down, and as water filled the vessel, he frantically searched for an escape route. With no way out, he found himself in a 4-square-foot air pocket, clinging to life in the dark, cold waters. 3 days passed, and O'Keene began to lose hope, believing he would die in the wreckage. Just as despair threatened to consume him, he heard a faint knocking sound above him. It was the divers who had come to search for survivors. They had no idea anyone had survived the sinking. The knocking grew louder, and O'Keene was able to signal to the divers, who quickly recognized that someone was alive in the wreckage. Once the divers reached him, they provided him with breathing apparatus and helped him ascend to the surface. After spending 3 harrowing days submerged at depths that should have killed him, O'Keene was brought to a decompression chamber to recover. His miraculous survival made headlines, but for him, it was a haunting reminder of the fragility of life at sea. He vowed never to return to the ocean, grateful for the second chance he had been given. 6. Julianne Coepque. On Christmas Eve 1971, 17-year-old Julianne Coepque boarded LANSA Flight 508 in Peru, excited to spend the holidays with her family. However, the flight took a deadly turn when it encountered a severe thunderstorm. Lightning struck the plane, causing it to break apart mid-air. In a surreal twist of fate, Coepque found herself still strapped to her seat as she plummeted 2 miles into the dense Peruvian rainforest. Miraculously, she survived the fall, albeit with a broken collarbone and other injuries. As she regained consciousness, surrounded by the sounds of the jungle, she realized she was utterly alone. With no survival gear and only a small amount of candy in her pocket, she set off into the wilderness, determined to find help. Coepque followed a small stream, knowing that water would lead her to civilization. Each day was a struggle as she fought through the dense foliage, battling hunger, insects, and the threat of wild animals. After 9 days of wandering and searching for signs of life, she stumbled upon a group of lumber workers. Exhausted and covered in insect bites, she was finally rescued and taken to safety. Her incredible journey through the jungle was later documented in the film Wings of Hope, showcasing the strength and resilience of the human spirit. 5. Endurance Expedition. In 1914, renowned explorer Ernest Shackleton set out on an ambitious expedition to cross Antarctica. His ship, the Endurance, was well equipped and manned by a crew of 28 men, all eager for adventure. However, their journey took a disastrous turn when the ship became trapped in dense pack ice in the Weddell Sea. For months, the crew endured freezing temperatures and dwindling supplies, all while waiting for the ice to release them. As the situation worsened, Shackleton made the difficult decision to abandon ship. The crew took to their lifeboats, embarking on a treacherous journey across the icy seas to reach Elephant Island, a small, uninhabited landmass. For 14 grueling days, they battled the elements, facing blizzards and freezing temperatures. Once they reached the island, they realized they were still far from safety. Shackleton and a small group of men set out on a perilous journey to South Georgia Island, nearly 1,000 miles away, in search of help. After facing nearly insurmountable odds, including treacherous seas and rugged terrain, they finally made it to the island and found a whaling station. The rescue mission was launched, and in a remarkable feat of endurance, all 28 men eventually returned home safely. Their harrowing experience in the Antarctic wilderness is a testament to human resilience and leadership in the face of adversity. 4. Apollo 13. The Apollo 13 mission in April 1970 was supposed to be a routine trip to the moon, but it turned into a life-and-death struggle for the crew. Astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes were en route to the lunar surface when an oxygen tank exploded, crippling their spacecraft and leaving them with limited resources. The crew faced a dire situation, operating with only a fraction of their intended supplies. With no way to land on the moon, they had to use the lunar module as a lifeboat, conserving energy and rations. The team worked tirelessly to devise a plan to slingshot around the moon and return to Earth, all while battling the clock and the cold, unforgiving depths of space. As they navigated their damaged spacecraft, the crew had to overcome numerous challenges. They had to make crucial calculations to ensure their trajectory would bring them back home safely. With limited power and dwindling oxygen, every decision became a matter of life and death. They rationed their food, stretching what little they had left to last for the duration of their return journey. Communication with Mission Control was a lifeline, as engineers worked around the clock to guide the astronauts. They devised creative solutions to critical problems, such as how to filter the carbon dioxide building up in the cabin. The crew had to make a makeshift filter using materials they had on board, including plastic bags and duct tape, a true testament to human ingenuity. As they approached Earth, the final challenge loomed: re-entry. The damaged command module had to be reoccupied after spending days in the lunar module. The crew carefully transferred themselves and their gear back to the command module, bracing for the intense heat and pressure of re-entering the atmosphere. On April 17, 1970, the crew of Apollo 13 splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, greeted by a rescue team that had been on standby, waiting for their return. The entire world held its breath, relieved to hear that Lovell, Swigert, and Hayes had survived against all odds. Their incredible journey became a symbol of resilience, teamwork, and the unyielding spirit of exploration. 3. Aaron Ralston. In April 2003, Aaron Ralston set out on a solo hiking trip in Utah's Blue John Canyon. An experienced climber and adventurer, he was excited to explore the rugged terrain. However, while descending a narrow canyon, a boulder unexpectedly dislodged, trapping his right arm against the canyon wall. Alone and unable to call for help, Ralston faced a terrifying reality. He had no means of escape and no one knew he was there. Ralston had limited supplies, just a small amount of water and snacks. As hours turned into days, he struggled to free himself, using all his strength to shift the boulder. He attempted various techniques, including wedging rocks and trying to lever the boulder away, but nothing worked. With each passing day, his situation grew increasingly dire. He was running low on water and energy. On the sixth day, with desperation setting in, Ralston realized he had to take drastic measures to survive. After contemplating his fate, he decided that self-amputation was his only option. Using a dull multi-tool, he began the painful process of cutting through the soft tissue of his arm. He broke his radius and ulna to make the process easier, a harrowing act of sheer willpower. After more than an hour of grueling effort, he successfully severed his arm. With newfound resolve, Ralston descended a 65-foot sheer wall and hiked several miles until he finally encountered a family camping in the area. They called for help, and he was airlifted to a hospital. Ralston's incredible story of survival and resilience was later chronicled in the film 127 Hours, capturing the intense struggle and the profound will to live. 2. Ada Blackjack. In 1921, Ada Blackjack, a young Inupiat woman from Alaska, joined an ill-fated expedition to the Wrangel Islands, which were claimed by Canada. Hired as a seamstress and cook, she joined a group of 5 men who aimed to stake a claim on the island. The expedition got off to a rocky start, and soon after they were left on the island, many of the men fell ill. As supplies dwindled, 3 of the men set off in search of help, leaving Blackjack with 1 ailing crewmate. Unfortunately, he soon died, leaving her completely alone in the harsh Arctic environment. With limited resources, Blackjack had to rely on her survival skills. She learned to hunt seals and polar bears, using her ingenuity to fashion tools and find food. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Blackjack endured the bitter cold, isolation, and the constant threat of polar bear attacks. She had to remain vigilant, using her knowledge of the land and her resourcefulness to stay alive. Her resilience was remarkable as she adapted to her surroundings and overcame the challenges of survival. After nearly 2 years of solitude, Blackjack finally spotted a ship on the horizon. It was a rescue vessel sent to find her and her companions. On August 28, 1923, she was brought back to civilization, but her return was bittersweet. Although she was hailed as a survivor, she faced skepticism and criticism for not saving the life of her crewmate. Nevertheless, her incredible story of survival in the Arctic wilderness remains a testament to the strength of the human spirit. 1. Tam Luang Cave Rescue. In June 2018, the world watched in suspense as a Thai soccer team, consisting of 12 boys aged 11 to 16 and their coach, became trapped in the Tam Luang Cave system following a sudden flash flood. After soccer practice, the group decided to explore the cave, but heavy rains quickly transformed the cave into a treacherous environment. The boys waded deeper into the cave, seeking higher ground as the water level rose. They eventually found an elevated platform about 4 kilometers inside the cave, where they waited for rescue. For the first 9 days, they had no food, relying on dripping water from stalactites to survive. Despite their grim circumstances, the boys remained remarkably resilient. They took turns digging a 16-foot hole into the cave wall, hoping to find a way out, and even meditated to conserve energy. Meanwhile, a massive search operation was launched, involving local authorities, volunteers, and expert divers from around the globe. After 9 days without contact, British divers discovered the boys on July 2, 2018, alive but in desperate need of assistance. The rescue mission was fraught with challenges, as the divers had to navigate narrow passages and underwater sections filled with fast-moving water. The operation to bring the boys to safety was complex and dangerous. Each boy was fitted with a full-face diving mask and tethered to 2 divers, who guided them through the perilous underwater journey back to safety. Over the course of 3 days, divers successfully retrieved all 13 members of the soccer team. The rescue captivated the world, showcasing extraordinary teamwork, courage, and the power of hope. Although a former Thai Navy SEAL tragically lost his life during the rescue efforts, the successful extraction of the boys became a symbol of resilience and the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity in the face of overwhelming odds.